issue with respect to MMEs, medical marijuana establishments, and the minutes for the first board reading are here. And also there are some disclosures, so Supervisor Binkowski, you want to disclose, and then I'll disclose.
Real estate agents in my real estate firm may have clients who are negotiating for leases for medical marijuana establishments. While I will not obtain any direct financial benefit from either a yes or no vote on this matter, I do have a commitment in a private capacity to my agents that some might say could reasonably affect my independent judgment. This agenda item deals with the general zoning framework for medical marijuana establishments and not any individual transactions. And because all members of the general business, profession, occupation, or groups that are affected by general zoning decisions are equally situated and equally affected by my vote, I believe under NRS 281A.420 subsection 4 that my independent judgment regarding proceedings in compliance with SB 374, which implements the requirements of the Nevada Constitution, is not materially affected by my commitment to my agents or my firm, and I will participate and vote regarding the general zoning framework established by the city for medical marijuana establishments.
I have a disclosure as well. Mine reads as follows. Members or employees of my law firm in our Reno and Las Vegas offices have clients who will be seeking future approval as a medical marijuana establishment in our state. While I will not obtain any direct financial benefit from either a yes or no vote on this matter, I do have a commitment in a private capacity to members of my firm and the firm's clients that some might say could reasonably affect my independent judgment. However, this agenda item deals with the general zoning framework for medical marijuana establishments and not an individual transaction. Therefore, because I do not possess any knowledge of a desired Carson City location of my firm's clients, if any, and thus I cannot intentionally influence the deliberations or vote towards such, and because all members of the general business, profession, occupation, or groups that are affected by general zoning decisions are equally situated and equally affected by my vote, I believe that under NRS 281A.420, subsection 4, that my independent judgment regarding proceeding in compliance with Senate Bill 374, which implements the requirements of the Nevada Constitution, is not materially affected by my commitment to my firm and its clients, and I will participate and vote regarding the general zoning framework established by the city for medical marijuana establishments. I have provided a written copy of this with the Secretary. Other disclosures? Anybody? Okay, we'll now take up, this is second reading of this ordinance. Mr. Plemel, you're going to take us through this again. Is that right? All right.
Sure. Hey, good evening. And for the record, Lee Plemel, Community Development Director. I'll be giving a brief presentation on this for second reading. Primarily, and with adoption of this, this is before you is an ordinance to adopt on second reading, amending Title 18, the various portions relating to adopt regulations to allow medical marijuana establishments in Carson City. And to be clear, as some questions have come up, this would be second reading. This would be the adoption of the ordinance tonight that would allow medical marijuana establishments in Carson City under these regulations. So this would be, I guess, characterized as the opt-in option for Carson City as it relates to Senate Bill 374. So what I just want to do all I want to do tonight, we've had quite a bit of discussion and meetings before this, changes along the way. I'm going to focus on the changes that we've made per the motion at the last meeting on first reading to second reading. Going through those changes really quick here. Based on the motion and discussion at the last Board of Supervisors meeting, we have reduced the zoning districts and areas in which the medical marijuana establishments could be located. I'll follow up with some maps to describe that in a little more detail. The setbacks in the ordinance that's before you were modified for community facilities from the 1,000 feet as it was proposed coming from the Planning Commission to 300 feet. So the setbacks for schools remain at 1,000 feet, but the setback for schools and community facilities are now the same as in state law. Another change from the first reading is eliminated limits on the number of cultivation, production, and testing facilities, which again, that's the same as the state. There's still a limit on the number of dispensaries in Carson City, both in state law and in the city code, to 2, a maximum of 2 dispensaries. And then finally, modified the requirement setbacks for dispensaries from residentially zoned property. The direction was go back to as it was originally proposed by staff to the Planning Commission. And again, I'll show some maps and provide a little quick summary over what those setbacks are. So going through to how the text translates to where these places are on the map. As you see, if in the text, it describes the areas in zoning, not only by zoning districts, but also by townships, range, and section. And so I've provided in your packets and on these maps, kind of the yellowish squares there are the sections with the township and range on them. So in the description, for example, this is the map showing where cultivation, production, and testing facilities would be located in Carson City. And limited by these areas, it would be only these areas on the map, which is general industrial areas and in those particular township section and range. So generally to orient you here, if you can see on the map, the freeway runs through here down the lower left corner with Highway 50 East running along here, and the dark blue areas are the general industrial areas in which those types of facilities would be located. There's also, I have two maps for the dispensary locations, and again, they're allowed in general commercial and in general industrial, but it has been further geographically restricted in the text by the township section and range, and again, township section range, and I'll represent that on the maps that are up there. So again, we're in the same location out the Highway 50 east of the freeway side, the red being general commercial, and the blue being general industrial. The dispensaries are limited to these areas. You'll see on this map, some of those other general industrial areas that were over by the airport are taken out. Those areas are not allowed to have dispensaries, those other general industrial areas. And what I've shown here and put on the map for representation here is in yellow and those hatched areas are the areas where in the text there's the residential setback. And at the end of this, I'll kind of go into that a little more detail, but it's basically where there's where a residential street comes in and intersects into these commercial areas. That's the area where that setback would apply. So these areas hatched and shaded in yellow are areas that would be and could be affected by the residential setback, which again I will go into more detail with the graphic at the end there. And then the second area, this is the other area that would allow dispensaries on South Carson Street. It's the general commercial area basically south of Moses Street, which is just a little north of Kuntz Lane. And then again, if I put the areas that would be potentially affected by the residential setback requirement, it would look like that. And finally, I did have a couple questions on what that setback is. So if you'll see in the text of the ordinance, and it's towards the end, it's on page 9 of the ordinance. It's section 2D there. And it says a dispensary shall not be located on property or within a shopping center with frontage on the same street on which a residentially zoned property is located, unless the dispensary is located more than 300 feet from the residential property, measured on a straight line from the nearest residential property line abutting the street right-of-way to the front door of the dispensary. So here's an example of how that would work shown on the map. So what we have here is the commercial corridor. These dark lines here are the zoning boundary lines that you see running through here. The lower part of this graphic in this example is zoned general commercial. So general commercial is an area where a dispensary could be located. We have a residential zoning, so these are residentially zoned properties up here, and another commercial zoning district here, but a zoning district in which dispensaries are not permitted. So the setback, so we have a street here that with residential properties located on it that comes into the commercial area. So therefore, per the text, this setback applies, and it's measured from the front property line here, that's this dashed line. And for the purpose of this example, let's say this is a shopping center on this side, so it applies to shopping center and any buildings located within the shopping center. And let's say on this side, these are property lines, these thinner lines here, that we have two properties that it affects, because this property and this property, because they front on the same street as the residentially zoned properties. And then we have these properties over here that are around the corner and front on Carson Street, not the residential property, so that would not apply to these properties. And the yellow shaded area would be the area where it's zoned general commercial, and they would otherwise be permitted, but they wouldn't be, they'd have to be located at least 300 feet from the residential property, not within that shaded area. So I hope that helps to explain it. That concludes my presentation on the changes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Go back to any maps and answer any other questions regarding the ordinance.
Have you received any other comments between first and second reading?
No, we've received no written comments. We've had some questions. We'd continue to have some questions on specific properties if under this new revised ordinance specific properties would be in or out, but we have no additional comments to forward to the board.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to take some public testimony. And there'll be another chance at the end of the meeting as well, but if anybody wants to talk about this issue, now is the time to do it. Mr. Kittis, come on up. Good evening to you.
Thank you. Mayor, supervisors, who would have thought just a month ago that we'd be here on the eve of Independence Day talking about marijuana? Well, I would ask for patience, for prudence. I appreciate there are entrepreneurs here tonight who are itching to get started, and you are compelled to permit them. I sent each of you a few litigation articles out of many that I found on the web. The last section of the NRS 453A is what prompted my comments at the first reading and again this evening. I don't think I've seen this in a state code. The state will not be held responsible for any deleterious outcomes from the medical use of marijuana by any person. Since the current legislation is enabling, it's not a mandate. The board could postpone opting in. It appears you are all quite excited about the revenue, so at the very least, I would hope that all the operators of the various facilities will sign hold harmless agreements with the city. Some background. I think the staff report, in my opinion, was incomplete, and the newspaper makes it sound like this is all brand new. SB 374 was the Fourth Amendment to the marijuana legislation. The first was AB 454 in 2001, authored by Assemblywoman Mrs. G. I can't pronounce her name. Thank you. Democrat, Las Vegas. Okay. Yes. So that bill in 2001, which is what I voted for in 2000, I thought that was reasonable. There it is. So this is from 2001. An act relating to controlled substances, exempting the medical use of marijuana from state prosecution in certain circumstances, revising the penalties for possessing marijuana and providing other matters properly relating thereto. And then the fourth or sixth whereas, all the whereases, Many residents of this state have suffered the negative consequences of abuse and addiction to marijuana. It is important for the legislature to ensure that the program established for the distribution, medical use of marijuana is designed in such a manner as not to harm the residents. For the new bill, for the fourth amendment to that bill, the Legislative Council wrote, this just drives me up a wall, existing law does not specify the manner in which qualifying patients and their designated primary caregivers are to obtain marijuana. Well, that's wrong. For 12 years, you could grow your own. That's what I voted for. That made sense. 7 plants, 1 ounce of marijuana. 12 years until last session. Okay. That NRS was revised in 2003, 2005, 2009. That's when the control was changed from the Department of Agriculture to Department of Health. So in my opinion, I voted for a good program in 2000, and I would have never voted for all this administrative bunk that they have now with pages and pages of rules. Bear in mind that the new version permits grow your own 12 plants, 2.5 ounces. Good. But that's only till May 2016. So there won't be any more grow your own. Oh no. You people that need marijuana for health purposes, now you got to go to a dispensary, you can pay higher prices with taxes, and bring cash. So how are you really helping the needy who believe the pot is beneficial? But the answer's near. I think within the last few days, Berkeley, California, I know it's over in California, but they lead the nation. They're considering requiring dispensaries to provide so much free pot to the poor. And of course, it must be the same high quality as the people that pay for the pot. And that'll spread elsewhere. So, like they say in the stock market, very volatile, very fluid market. Check out all the creative changes planned in Colorado just yesterday. They say their 4-month-old laws are in transition. Our legislature will meet next spring. You can pretty well count that they'll have a whole lot of more changes coming, probably before the 2 applicants even get to open their dispensary. So that's why I say, get a hold harmless agreement, something. If you can't go after the state, don't go after Carson City taxpayers, because these rules are going to be changing. I'm almost finished. I was troubled by the incremental circumvention of federal law. The result of this circumvention, no doctor can prescribe, no pharmacy can dispense, money laundering laws, so all cash, no credit cards, no product crossing state lines, no United Parcel or FedEx, and lots of taxes. And of course, state-regulated facilities. And maybe this is the grand plan. Our state will get its orders from Washington, D.C. It's not about helping sick people, so let's just call it what it is. I mean, it's pot for everyone. I think everyone in this room could qualify for a card. So, like they say in the casino business, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Other comment? Either way, up or down. Other public comment? Anybody? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Chris Peternell, and I have lived and been a productive member of Carson City for the past 22 years. I've been diagnosed with a seizure disorder as of recently. I'm currently a holder of a Nevada medical marijuana card. Medical cannabis has reduced my symptoms, improved my quality of life, and in health, preventing further seizures. It has reduced anxiety from the current medically prescribed medication that has been given to me. And so far, obtaining this medication when I need it has proven difficult and at times scary. It has been stressful not knowing who I am buying it from or whether I will get in trouble for doing so. Because of my health condition and life circumstances, I do not have the time or knowledge to cultivate my own medical marijuana. Cultivate my own medical marijuana. As I work and I have a family, my use of this medication is done in private. Because my life and my family circumstances, it is not practical or reasonable for me or most others to grow marijuana at home. Like many other people suffering from medical conditions that have been helped by cannabis products, I look forward to the day when I can legally and safely and discreetly obtain the medical treatment I need without the fear of an arrest or having to meet some drug dealer in a dark alley that I may not know or trust. A legal and licensed dispensary will help me safely obtain the right medicine for my condition, as the physical effects and potencies of different strains of cannabis can vary widely. A licensed and regulated dispensary will only sell products that are cultivated in clean, safe, and regulated environments and are properly labeled to their potency and are not contaminated with toxins or other pollutants that can make medical users even sicker. Please pass this zoning ordinance so that those people whose health and well-being depend on the availability of medical cannabis can move towards solving the problems I have just described to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Other public comment? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
I did do some research on the average age of the medical marijuana user. Oh, I thought you would know by now. My name is Colleen Schiller. The average medical marijuana user is white, male, and 32 years of age. I just thought it was interesting. I spent some time in my neighborhood and in a couple of other neighborhoods that were open for possible rezoning. And the residents were all very upset with just the limited notification radius of 200 feet. And many felt that there should be some kind of posting on the parcels to be rezoned with information hearing and who to talk to in regards to that rezoning. Because there were many people that were just outside the 200-foot range that were not notified that this was proposed for the neighborhood, and they were very upset with that. So I just wanted to mention that's something we should post a sign on a major street where you can see it if you live outside that area. Otherwise, I think it's kind of janky. You're trying to do something that the public really doesn't understand. I've also asked about who would be underwriting these facilities insurance-wise and how things would be paid for by the city. Should there be a disaster, we have to implement a major emergency plan. People were curious about that, how anything was going to be covered. They also mentioned to me, and I spent a lot of time talking to people, the 300-foot residential setback has been removed in this version, except for if you're on a fronting street. And they felt that was inadequate, that it should be 300 feet from the lot line, regardless of where it was placed to the facility. And second and last of all, I guess not second, but last of all, a vote for this zoning means that you're opting in. And both you, Mr. Bronkowski, and Mr. Crowell have stated that you are only voting for the zoning because you have a significant conflict of interest otherwise. And we've already heard that that's not, you're not going to separate the two. If you vote for this zoning, you're opting in, and I think you both have a significant conflict of interest with opting in. And I think that should be noted in the record. And if you can, I don't think you should be voting on it. Thank you.
Colleen.
Colleen,
Yes.
I have a question for you. Of the people that you spoke to, and first there's no rezoning involved on any parcels, but of the people that you talked to, how many of those residences are no longer affected by these current zoning maps or use maps?
None of them are affected as what's shown present, but you had proposed rezoning residential parcels to limited commercial or general industrial in our neighborhood because I checked the zoning before I bought my home, and I know what the zoning was on all the empty parcels.
But now none of those people are affected by where we've ended up.
Not so far as I know.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So but they were upset that they had not had a sign or something else. That's just something for you guys to think about.
Thank you, Colleen. Other public comment? Anybody else? Guy? Nope. Who's going the other way? Anybody else? Public comment? Good evening.
Hello. My name is Julie Sutton, and I come to you today with a personal story regarding my 17-year-old son who has a chronic pain disorder. He's had this disorder since he was 8 years old, and as you can imagine, as a parent with a child who can barely walk, much less do anything else, he's bedridden 95% of the time. We have tried every opiate out there to help with his chronic pain, most of which don't work because it's a very rare disorder that less than 400 people have. And I share this with you because a little over a year ago, we tried medical marijuana, and it worked for him. To see a child get up and walk after the use of cannabinoids and other forms of medical marijuana, it's not just the THC that has value. So I'm here to share the fact that I'm in support of this. As a mother, trying to obtain this type of medicine for their child is very difficult. And not only safety, but the various strains. Not every strain of medical marijuana works for him. So to grow it ourselves and find you don't have the proper strain, that's a value to a lot of medical patients out there because there are so many strains. I mean, Colorado being a good example with a strain I can't remember offhand. Charlotte's Web, thank you. That helps a number of patients. It's something that the dispensaries can really help with. Exploring the various strains, obtaining those, and providing them to their patients. It's of huge value. So if Carson City does not provide this, we would have to drive to other areas to be able to find these various strains and have the safety. Again, a mother of a child. My child has had this illness. His onset was age 8. Just a little over a year ago, we were able to find something that helps him. He's been bedridden for a great period of his life. And to see that given back to him through the use of medical marijuana. Again, it's not just the THC we're talking about. It's all the other value that medical marijuana holds for patients. And that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. More public comment? Anybody? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. Guy, come on up. Mr. Farmer.
My name is Guy Farmer, longtime resident of Carson City, with a question for Supervisor Bonkowski to follow up on the young lady in the back. Brad, do you intend to vote on this ordinance?
On the zoning or on individual applications?
Pardon me?
On the zoning ordinance or on individual applications?
Both?
I intend to vote tonight. I do not intend to vote on any individual applications.
Despite the fact that your significant other is one of the most vocal advocates for medical marijuana in this town, don't you see that as a conflict of interest?
As long as all applicants, whether represented or not, are treated equally, there's no conflict.
We see that differently, but thank you for your answer.
Other public comment? Anybody? Oh. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Daria Shoemaker for the record, and I'm here to voice my opinion that I support the draft that staff has created. They've done a fabulous job, and I think they did a great job at the last meeting hearing out a compromise. And as it's already been stated from two previous people that have given public comment, that this is a medicine. And I was just at the Douglas County meeting where they did opt out and they are prohibiting MMEs in their county. And it was really interesting to sit back there and watch what was happening with the commissioners. And they'd actually gone a long way from a few months prior when all of them were not for medical marijuana and they hadn't been educated about it. And I could see a shift in quite a few of the commissioners because they had taken a proactive step in educating themselves about this as medicine. And they were saying, we don't have a problem with this as a medicine. We can see that it helps. We're going to let Carson City do it, and they're passing the buck over here. And I thought that was pretty shabby of them to not take responsibility for their citizens and uphold a dispensary to help with their 151 medical marijuana card holders. This gentleman mentioned about being held responsible, and I think that's a great idea, that just like in a pharmacy, when patients come in to get their medicine, they should be educated about it, its addiction, its side effects, and they should be responsible for their medicine when it leaves the dispensary so that it isn't found in the hands of people that don't need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Anyone? All right. I don't see anybody. We're going to bring it back here for board discussion then, so we'll see where this ends up on second reading tonight. We'll discuss here. This is on second reading. There's an ordinance that's there. So it's the pleasure of the board. Jim, you want to start? You got anything you want to?
Yeah. Lee, could you put up the first slide you had, please? There's no number there, but the line item 2, the modified setbacks from the community facilities from 1,000 to 300 feet, that's per state law. We're going back to that one, correct? Okay. On the next line, elimination, the limits of the number of cultivation and testing facilities. So there's no limit, is that correct?
There's no limit in the number of facilities in Carson City per our regulations. Correct.
So there could be 2, or there could be 22 or 220?
The number will be determined by the state through the state regulations based on the number of applicants, based on the demand and need for cultivation facilities, production and testing facilities to serve the dispensaries in Carson City and I guess the region.
So the number of facilities that would do cultivation will be up to the state, not Carson City, and that could be any number. We do not, or Carson City will not have any say in the number.
Right. That's correct. So there is, for all facilities, a special use permit would be required. That's correct. There's not a number, and it would probably be difficult to deny somebody based on a number limit without having it in the ordinance. Yeah.
So those communities that have opted out, such as Douglas, those individuals who wanted to put a cultivation facility in Douglas will now be coming here, more than likely, or another place. But we're going to get the runoff from everybody that doesn't opt in for it and opted out. We'll get everyone who applied, or more than likely, they will be coming here to put in a facility here. If it can't go anywhere else, it's got to come someplace. It would have to come in. That's my personal observation, not a question or a statement, nor to, on the revenue generated by the cultivation, Carson City does not per se partake in the revenue generated from the cultivation. Is that correct or incorrect?
I believe in looking at state law from last time, there's no taxable sales. Only the dispensaries are generate the sales tax, which then the regular portion of sales tax comes to Carson City. So for the other types of facilities, it would just be the property tax and any personal property taxes for like any other industrial business, a wholesale business.
I agree. And according to Nick, our financial...
Oh, and she pointed out any business license fees as well. Yeah.
When I talked to Nick, our financial director, he used the number of $1 million in sales and how much it would come to Carson City. It's a nominal amount. It's not even 3 digits. I mean, it's like $76,000 per $1 million that we will generate for the community. But the state does receive revenue from the cultivation, do they not? I don't know if anybody can answer that.
Yes, the state wrote it into the law, so they get 2% for all sales, even the wholesale side of things.
So the state, in and of itself, would be motivated to allow or push forward more cultivation because they're generating 2% sales tax. And what I was told, or the numbers I'm looking at, is they expect anywhere from roughly $76 million to $126 million in sales revenue of cultivation. And take 2% of that, the state generates a lot of income. And we will not get anything from that. I don't know. Since I do have the microphone for a split second, since this last meeting, I did more research, and the ballot question number 9 from the state, it states, it did pass by a large margin. Voters did vote in favor of it, but it was mostly for the patient medical marijuana card. Now, authorization, section 38, line E, there is a tagline in there. It says authorization of approved methods for supply of the plant to patients authorized to use it. From that, then we went to, as Bruce mentioned, Assembly Bill 453, and then we came to the State Bill 374, which then the governor passed down to us. But I have no qualms. I personally know that medical marijuana can and does help people. I know that. We had 2 family members who recently passed away, and I know medical marijuana helped them. I am not against medical marijuana. It does help certain individuals. Will people abuse that? I'm sure they will. But I think this board, when we come to the motion, I would like to, at least if this board would allow me to make a motion first, unless I need to do it now, I would more look at the dispensaries rather than the cultivation and help and start a process. And what I'm leading to is I think we need to move forward with this with the dispensaries first, cultivation later, and start a slow process where we can monitor it, we can see the progress, we can keep an eye on it. We're taking care of individuals who need the medical marijuana because that's what the ballot initiative was for to begin with. That's what the citizens in Carson City voted on, was a medical marijuana card, not on the cultivation, and certainly not on unlimited cultivation establishments going in Carson City. I think this has gone from where we want to go. It's going way beyond where the original intent was. And I strongly urge this board to reconsider what we're doing on this motion. If we're allowing medical marijuana dispensaries, I'm all for that. and we can start out slow and precise, keep an eye on it. We can start with one dispensary, in another 6 months, add the other one, and then in a year's time, if everything's going smooth, then we can do the cultivation. But to jump all in, I voted in favor of the first ordinance. I do. I have never swayed my vote, and I believe we need to stand back, look at this, and I know I've talked to the DA for the last 2 days, numerous emails back and forth. We can still opt out, or I can make a reading here and a motion to do the dispensaries, cultivation later, and we'd have to have a second reading on that. At that time, we'd be 2 days late for the state regulation, but I don't think it's a problem from what I've been told. Maybe it is, but I feel very confident that we could do something and help those individuals that need the medical card, and we do not have to go all in, such as this ordinance allowing unlimited cultivation of marijuana in our community. I think that's asking too much of our citizens and certainly stepping over the bounds. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Jim, we'll have time. We'll see where this goes, and we'll make sure that there's a way where you can raise that motion by either amendment or its own motion. So.
I was just trying to get the first push in to try and sway your vote.
You're doing all right. You're doing all right. You're doing all right. Mr. Benkowski.
I have some questions, I think, for staff. There's additional items that we're going to need to address if we move forward. One is the fees for a special use permit for a business license and potentially application fees. Second would be use of the proceeds of those fees, possibly for drug awareness and rehabilitation programming. Also, we need to set an application period, or maybe we don't, but we haven't really had that discussion. So just like some feedback on when those items might come back to us if we move forward with this ordinance tonight. And then I'd also like to address, too, my interaction with Mr. Farmer. I just want to put on the record that I spend a lot of time working with the district attorney and with the state ethics commission to make sure that I am always in compliance on ethical issues. And I have a written opinion from the state ethics commission that says that I don't have a conflict if I vote on the ordinance here tonight. And so I follow their lead on this. So we may or may not agree on whether you think I have a conflict of interest here, but I do spend a lot of time trying to determine where I should go on these issues. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
I have a couple of comments. One with regards to Jim's wanting to approve dispensaries only. I do have an issue with that because we had law enforcement talk to us, and quite specifically, and co-locating facilities, that is, grow and dispense in the same location, is actually much easier to police and much better for security and much better for those purposes. So that would virtually eliminate that possibility, which I do have an issue with. Secondly, I do feel that demand will dictate supply in terms of cultivators. And different cultivators are going to be pursuing different strains. Not all strains apply to every condition. So there's a variety of applications regarding that. And then lastly, Bruce Kittis's mention of a hold harmless agreement. I'm going to address this to the DA. How could we do that?
Joe Ward from the DA's office. The district attorney's office does not believe that a hold harmless agreement is really something that's required. The decision by this governing body is discretionary, and there's not only discretionary immunity, but also I would suspect that any applicant going down this road is going to be fully aware that marijuana, regardless of decriminalization or legalization, remains under federal law, under the Controlled Substances Act, a Scheduled I controlled substance. And they're also perhaps aware of the White House administration and the U.S. Attorney General's position with respect to medical marijuana or in Colorado and Washington, recreational use. So given that, and kind of roundabout way, addressing what I believe is a knowing assumption of risk, and again, back to what this body is going to be doing, and that's purely discretionary in nature, the DA's office does not believe that a hold harmless agreement is necessary.
Other comments from the board? Go, Jim. We're at the board level here, so go.
I'll come back to Karen's. Well, I don't think our sheriff department would come out and state that it's easier to maintain law enforcement if the dispensary is here and the cultivation is here, if they knew there was going to be unlimited amount of dispensaries and cultivations coming in here. I think they'd be very concerned, regardless of the cultivation and dispensaries being on the same property. We're now going open-end. There's no limit. It could be endless how many cultivations we have here in Carson City. And I don't think you'll get, I'm not speaking for the DA, but I don't think you get the DA or the Sheriff's Department to endorse even dispensaries coming into Carson City. So law enforcement handles everything, but with dispensaries and cultivations coming in and no revenue coming in, the idea that crime may go up, yeah, and we won't have the funds to cover it. We won't have the revenue to cover the expense of new enforcement in these areas. So there's going to be a lot of repercussions from the cultivation and from the dispensaries coming in here. It's just not sales to the individuals. There's overlapping measures, which we haven't discussed either. So there's a magnitude coming in here. I see your point of view, but there's two sides to every argument. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying I'm right as well.
Well, on that, go ahead and make a motion. That's good. Make a motion. Then we'll see where it goes, Jim. I think that's a pretty good way of saying it, actually. Go for it.
Well, what I would like to do, my motion is I need, if the motion is approved, we'll have to have a second reading. And my discussion with the DA will put us over that time limit of when the state is, when we're required to do this. However, as I stated, and not with Joe here, but with Randy, I said, well, that's the consequences. I don't think if we come in a day, a week later on this, I don't think the state will come after us and point a finger and say, hey, we're going to sue you because you didn't do it in the time frame necessary. That I don't know, but I'll make my motion as I intended to it. And again, I want to stress, I am not against medical marijuana. It does help. I really believe it. I've seen it in my family. But my motion would be that we have staff rewrite the ordinance to allow one dispensary, and then within a 6-month anniversary of the first dispensary to allow that second dispensary to come in. On the 1-year anniversary of the dispensary, we allow the first cultivation establishment to come to town, and that on the 1-year anniversary of that, then we allow the second cultivation to come forward. And we limit it to 2 cultivations establishment. We also changed the modified setbacks from the community facilities from the 300 back to the 1,000. That's my motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it so we can discuss it.
Go.
Discussion?
Discussion.
A lot of fear, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, that sort of thing. But what we're really coming down to here is a zoning issue, whether or not Carson City wants to go into to allow this legal business to be conducted here. And I know that we all feel, sitting up here, that we can run a business better than anyone, but I personally don't think the government should be involved in business unless they absolutely have to. My concerns about medical marijuana in Carson City have to do with what are our rights if this doesn't work out the way the city wants it to. Can we close these places down? Are we going to have to incur significant law enforcement costs? That sort of thing. Other than that, it's a legal business just like any other legal business in Nevada, and I intend to allow legal businesses to be conducted by local business people to the extent possible, because I think government should just stay out of the whole thing.
Brad?
My concern with the motion on the table is that if we go into the application period, the state application period, there's a 10-day period, and then it's closed down for the next year. So if we miss that application period, then the intent of your motion is going to be circumvented anyway, because we're not going to get one dispensary in now, because we would not have gotten the applications into the state on time. So I have some concerns about that. So I don't know. I understand your logic. I'm just not sure that the logistics work at this late date.
No, I was going to say, that's a great point. And my discussion with the DA, I don't know if you can answer this, and I tried to allude to the fact I wouldn't ask any questions of the DA at the meeting, but when does we have a moratorium in place now. Can we not renew the moratorium on this motion or on this ordinance to extend that further, to give us more time? Are we allowed to do that?
Joe Ward from the DA's office. I believe that an amendment to the ordinance would require 2 readings at regular meetings, and you probably could not do it as simply as you are suggesting.
Well, we'd have a meeting this month, July, and we'd have the first Thursday in August, which I believe is August 5th. So does that work in with the time frame of the moratorium to move it forward? Does that allow us that? Because that's 2 regular meetings.
Yes, I understand that the state deadline is August 5. The board meeting would be August 7. It would be after the state deadline if you were able to get this on 2 consecutive regular meeting agendas. And this matter is not on this agenda.
Right, I know, because we'd have to have the 2 meetings coming up. But we'd miss the deadline by 2 days, correct? Is there a repercussion for that? I mean, could the state hold us liable for anything?
I can't speak for the state.
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, Lee or Joe, does the zoning ordinance right now speak to numbers of facilities, or does it just define?
So for dispensaries.
Either dispensaries or does it speak to how many you can have?
Yes.
The ordinance we have in front of us.
It's specifically in the ordinance before you limits the number of dispensaries to 2. So we can have a maximum of 2 in Carson City. That's also state law. However, the ordinance does not have a limit on the number of any of the other type of facilities, the cultivation, production, or testing facilities.
Point me to the language about the limitation, please.
Yeah, so let's see, that would be on page,
Page 9 for dispensaries. Item J, page 9.
no more, I'm sorry, yeah, that's right, it's towards the top of page 9 within section 1J, no more than, that's the wrong, the language that's on my copy, I don't know what, the language that's on my copy says no more than 2 each of dispensaries, cultivation facilities, or production facilities. However, that was supposed to be amended. That is
It's an old
the,
version. Well, mine says no more than 2 dispensaries. I mean, the current one that's published says no more than 2 dispensaries should
yeah,
get
or I
permit.
have an old copy in front of me.
Okay, let me ask another question. Either for the DA or for Mr. Plemmel or his staff. Is it possible under the business license process or the special use process to assess a fee for each of these types of entities that is based upon a reasonable estimation of the societal costs or other costs that the city might incur?
So I will let Joe tag on to this, but this kind of follows up. Supervisor Bonkowski asked the question, so let me kind of talk about how we plan on handling fees. So we've had some discussion about this before. So as we go forward, our intent is that we would not increase our special use permit fee. That's just a one-time fee that's processing the special use permit. In talking with the DA, we've decided that our time of processing these types of special use permits is not significantly different than any other type of special use permit. So the justification is harder there, not necessarily there for that aspect of it. We are proceeding and looking into and frankly following what others around the state are doing for the business license fees. They're across the state, they're in that process now of writing their business impact statements and making those very justifications that you're talking about to have a pretty significant, relatively significant, it would be for Carson City, particularly business license fees to cover some of those costs.
Joe Ward from the DA's office. Sparks, Nevada right now is currently soliciting input from other jurisdictions with respect to its business impact statement and prospective business license fees. The city of Las Vegas, according to the newspaper article I read, is looking at an annual fee of $70,000, and that may be the high end of fees. With respect to the Carson City Charter, there's language in the charter that allows, provided that you can make this connection, an equitable, if there's an equitable standard used to come up with a business license fee, then by all means, and there may be, given the discussion we've heard and probably continue to hear for a long time, enough factors to justify or make the connection to the fee that's ultimately arrived at. And other jurisdictions are looking at business license fees.
Okay. Let me ask one other question, and I'll give up the microphone here. Anybody happen to take a look at the legislative history on this bill to see if there's a discussion about the limit of cultivators? Anybody? If you didn't, just tell me you didn't.
I
don't want you to
didn't,
speculate.
and I'm just going back to what Director Plemmel said. I believe that there may be something in the bill that talks about, and Supervisor Abowd mentioned that demand
I got you on that. I'm just wondering if there was a discussion, that level of discussion at the legislature. It's not in the bill, but I wonder if there's anything in the. It's just a thought.
I would have to search that.
All right, no problem. All right. Okay. You know, my own sense is that it's an interesting thought that Jim has. I'm a little concerned, and matter of fact, I'm more than a little concerned that, you know, if you go down that road, then we're going to be, you know, we're not going to have anything done in time for this first window to come through here. So that's my concern, but I understand what Jim is saying. So, all right. We have a motion and we have a second. Are we ready to vote on that motion? Looks like we are. Do you want to get another shot at? No. You can have at it, man. That's all right. This is on the motion. This is us here. So I mean, okay.
I know there's I will take the other opportunity.
Sure.
I guess I never turn them down. But I understand the deadline and that we're faced with, but I still think you can still do the opt-out. You can extend that moratorium out. We can come back. We have other alternatives. We don't need to. I think what's on that screen right there, no limits on cultivation, I think that's a red flag. I don't see how anybody on this board is going to go for that. I don't see the setbacks from narrowing it down to 300. I think if our intent is to help those individuals that need the marijuana, we go ahead and we do not necessarily need to jump all in. We can set up the dispensaries first and move along and make sure everything's done properly and accordingly. So thank you for the opportunity.
There's a lot of information here, for lack of a better word. And I understand where you're coming from, Jim, about there's a lot of intent to help people that need medical marijuana, et cetera. But that, to me, is the decision the state made, the legislature made. They said that the state wants to help those people. What we're talking about here, as far as I'm concerned, is whether or not we want to zone Carson City so that a legal business can be operated, whether it be to sell alcohol or to sell medical marijuana. I don't want to get, if we get into the moral aspects of whether or not the state did the right thing, saying that Nevada should sell this substance, I mean, we're recasting the vote that the citizens made. And I don't know if they were right or wrong or even like their decision, but I come back to what's the purpose of local government, and that's to operate the city in a reasonable way so that we have a nice place to live and we have a good place to do business. And there are people that are going to spend a lot of money on these businesses, and I don't want to be telling them how to operate their business. If we allow this business to exist in Carson City, then it's a business that we have in Carson City, and we treat it not like any other business. We treat it like we manage this business like it should be managed so that the people in Carson City have a nice place to live. If we want to get into the moral aspects of whether or not this substance or that substance should be allowed, I think we have to have a lot longer and a different discussion.
The special use permit process will also further regulate what it is we do going forward, correct?
So the special use permit is a discretionary permit that they have to apply for any medical marijuana establishment.
So by limiting the number of cultivation facilities, we are limiting the ability to do business. That's the way I look at that, because the dispensaries need a variety of different strains in order to accommodate people's various medical needs. So putting a limit on cultivators limits the ability to do business. That's my concern.
Okay. Jim, you want to take the last shot here, and then we'll vote. Go.
It's not a moral issue of what we're allowing here. I think it's the right and prudent thing to do, is to help those individuals receive the medical treatment that was prescribed to them by a physician. Going back to the cultivation, yes, I believe that a lot of money will be invested into those establishments, and a lot of money is going to be made from those establishments too. So is there, I think having an unlimited amount of cultivation establishment in Carson City, I don't think is in the best interest of Carson City. I don't think it's going to make it a more beautiful place to live. I don't think it's going to make it more attractive to move here. I don't think it brings a lot of attractiveness to the Carson City itself. As to, this board members have said repeatedly, I've heard in the last 16 months, we don't want the state telling us what to do. Number of times this has been discussed and brought up at this board by members of this board. And here we are, we're doing what we're told by the state. We can set what we want as our own limits within our community. And what we're doing now is saying, well, let's just go along with what the state wants. Let's just go ahead and do it. Douglas said no, and I think if my notes, I could dig up my notes, there's other communities that said no, we're opting out, because they're all going to go no. And all of those individuals, as it was testified at the microphone, everyone's going to come from Douglas down here and other facilities as well. So we do have options, and I just want to remind the board of that. Thank you for the time.
Okay.
Sorry, I have one more comment.
Incan, go ahead.
All right. I've been self-employed since I was 20 years old. One thing I know about business is that demand will control supply. And so I'm not overly concerned about an unlimited number of production and cultivation facilities, because there's only 2 dispensaries in town, and they can only buy enough product that they're going to sell. They're not in the business of keeping inventory on the shelves. So you're not going to see 30 production and cultivation facilities churning out tons of product because they have nobody to sell it to. So I'm pretty confident that in our case here, that you're not going to see people make unwise investments of hundreds of thousands of dollars to grow product that they can't sell. So I'm comfortable with the limits that are in the proposal.
Okay. All right. We're ready to vote. We have a motion and a second on this one. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, that motion fails. All right, now we'll take just to tee it up, see where it goes, we'll take a motion on the other side. Want to do it? Anybody? Okay.
Ordinance number. Kathy?
Sorry. 2014-10.
I move to adopt Bill number 110 on second reading, ordinance number 2014 R10, an ordinance amending Title 18 zoning, Chapter 18.03 definitions, Chapter 18.04 use districts, and Chapter 18.16 development standards, Division 1 land use and site design, to adopt regulations to allow medical marijuana dispensaries as a conditional use within the general commercial and general industrial zoning districts, and to allow medical marijuana cultivation facilities, production facilities, and testing laboratories as a conditional use in the general industrial zoning district, and to establish development standards for such facilities and other matters properly related thereto.
Motion by Supervisor Abel, second by Supervisor McKenna. On the motion, discussion. Go. Supervisor, sure. Jim.
I just want to clarify that what's on the screen there is part of the ordinance, correct, Lee?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience, board members. I do greatly appreciate you allowing me to speak, and also for this board to allow an evening session, too. I think that was very gracious of you, and I applaud you for that. Since I've been elected official, I have never moved from one position to another position. I try to maintain and do my homework so that when I come here before the public and before this board, I maintain the same stance and look at things not the same way, but at least if it's a double vote or 2 votes like this, I maintain the same. In all due respect, I have to withdraw my prior vote in favor of this from the previous meeting, and I do so because, as I stated earlier, I believe unlimited, as Brad mentioned, he's been self-employed from a young man. I've been self-employed since I was 12. I started working. I know business. I've had businesses, and I understand I have a different philosophy and a different outlook. I believe that sooner or later I believe a businessman has every right to open a business. I believe as protecting the citizens within this community, we have a right and duty and responsibility to monitor what those businesses are. That's why we don't have the Bunny Ranch in town. That's why we don't have a lot of things here, because we monitor that and we took a stand and we looked out for the citizens, and I think that's what we're supposed to do. I appreciate everything this board has done, but I cannot go along with this. I believe businessmen do have the opportunity and they should be given the right. I just want to protect the citizens from establishing this as the place such as Colorado has become. Not that I know people live there and I don't mean to dishonor them by by bringing that name in. But there's a lot of issues here that we cannot and we're not going to get resolved, and we're going to go into this all in, and I think we should take a smaller steps along the way, and I don't like how we're doing this, but thank you for your time.
The smaller steps, I think, are picked up by the special use permit process and the business license process. I mean, that's where the deal with this is general zoning law. But further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
4-1, that motion passes on second reading. Okay. Are we done with this item? We're now, we're in public comment here in a minute. We'll be happy to do it. Okay, so we're finished this item. We'll now move to concluding public comment. Now's the time. Come on up, sir.
Yeah, my name's Santos Corral. I've been a resident of Carson City for 40 years. I've been attending the state things like this, and to Jim over there, they said something about 20 pharmacies would dictate one dispensary. That's what they said at the state. And the deadline is the 1st of August for all the applications, and the applications vary from $20,000 to $5,000 non-refundable. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to be a caretaker. These people here need somebody to grow, so you have to think about how many caretakers do you want. They don't know how to grow. I have 15 acres out in Mudflap, Egypt, and they come to me and they say, hey, and so it's good to say we want these guys to grow, these farmers, and the way the state has it right now, I have to go through the state for the application, and I have it, and then I give them the money, and then whatever you guys come up with the zoning, that's what we do. But there's nothing about caretakers there, and I'd like to mention that. So in the event I'm a caretaker, and in some states you can only be a caretaker for like 4 or 5 people, 3 or 4 people. In the past, the caretakers have been taking care of people, and they each have 7 plants, but now they have 12. So if I'm taking care of 5 caretakers, I got 60 plants. You got to have the paperwork, and you got to go through the state, and they're dictating everything right now. And like he said, you guys are going to have the meeting on the 7th. It's history, for everybody else. But those people are going to put their applications in, and if you only have one dispensary that you're going to allow, they're going to, wow, So I would think about the dispensaries, because in 2007 I had an industrial accident. I went through 10 surgeries, and they got me on the medical marijuana plan, because if I had taken half the pain pills they gave me, I'd have died. But I ended up losing 65 pounds on the program, and it helped me out. And so, I just want to be a caretaker, and I don't know if you have that on your agenda or not, but if you have stuff like that, you can help other people. And you say, hey, you can only have 5 people. And so, you have to think about everything else. But the state is controlling everything. And like you say, you want to know how many dispensaries? They said 20 pharmacies, 1 dispensary. So I figured right in Carson they're going to have 2 dispensaries. You don't have 40 pharmacies here. So, that's what I got to say. So the state is, but the deadline, but caretakers are good. I'd like to help these people like I help myself, and people do need it. They don't grow it, and they don't have it, and they live in town, and they don't have to go down the alley and buy the stuff, It's everything's legal up and on the thing. So that's what I got to say.
Okay. Thank you. Further public comment. Anybody on concluding comment? Anybody?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Come on.
My name is Peter Bader, and we heard from all the people that need the marijuana, and I sympathize with those people. Well, I'm one of the residents that lives right next to light industrial zoning, and I have a very good chance that somebody will move in there, because there's empty buildings that have been empty. The guy built them a few years ago, and then the economy went downhill. So he's more than eager to fill them up. There's nothing but a fence between that. How many of you live next to light industrial? You? Bonkowski? Okay, so maybe you and me will be seeing the same thing, but I don't feel very safe about this, okay? I have no problem with the growers, and I don't have no problem with the dispensaries. I have no problem with the patients. But that will also attract other crowds. If you're going to have a warehouse with 50,000 square feet and it's full of plants, you can't tell me that's not going to attract criminals try to get it. Yeah? So who's going to protect me? Are any of you guys going to be there if I shoot somebody in my yard?
Okay.
If they come in the middle of the night, is anybody going to be there, help me out? I agree with Jim. You guys start out slow. You're talking about, we're not going to go full in. We have limited resources. Do you have any idea how much electricity that's going to cost and water and whatnot? Do you know you're already limiting me in using water because it's a desert? Have you noticed how shitty the water is lately? Because the water table is down, because we have a drought. So you want to continue to use resources we don't have? If you want to create money for this city, you better start building up businesses, And I mean, use federal funds wisely instead of building out the airport. You could have used those millions of dollars to start building a business in one of those empty state buildings. Make LED light bulbs, for example. Something you can actually sell in the future. You could have created jobs, So you people better think about this. Most of you won't be affected by that. I probably will. And I don't want to stand here someday and say, hey, guess what? That plant just blew up because the guy decided to make hash oil instead of marijuana. Or why not, huh? So I'm going to hold all of you responsible, except for him. Okay? Thank you.
Other concluding comment? Anybody? Okay, I don't see any. I forgot to mention this morning, and I'll take this up under concluding comment. If any of the board members want to see the Public Lands Task Force draft report, please let the city manager know, and he'll let me know to send it out to you. Then if you got any comments about it, you can give them to him, and he'll transmit it back to me. So, but that report's going to get, I'm going to vote on that report next, the 18th of June, this month. And I was going to bring it in here, but it just seemed to me that, and I talked to Supervisor Shirk a little bit about it, just seemed like it's difficult to do that, to have this board look at what another agency's been doing for 10 months. It just puts you in a bad position.
We're passing, yeah.
Okay.
Send me a copy.
All right. Thanks, you guys. All right. Anything else? If not, then we're adjourned.
24th.